Picking the wrong app ID is the #1 reason apps fail. Today, I'm showing you the process that I like to use before I start building a new app. I'll use AI as a sparring partner for brainstorming new ideas. And I'll also cover a few ASO tools that I think are crucial in defining whether or not you should go for that single app ID. But before we dive into those tools, I want to start with what defines a good app ID. And I believe there are 8 core requirements that I like to use for my app IDs. And the first one, it solves a real problem. Kind of makes sense, right? You might want to make just a fun app or anything like that, but if you're actually solving a problem, the app has way more potential to become a success. It should be aligned with your personal interests. You'll be faced a lot of challenges, and if you want to push through, it's so much easier if you genuinely love what you're doing. The app ID should fit your competence. Like, I'm a really bad cook, so I will never build a recipe app because I just can't cook. So never eat with me. Either way, make sure that the app ID aligns with your interest and that it fits your competence, that you know what you're building, that you might have actually experience in building this app already. I built a WeTransfer app, transferring files, uploading files. I know a lot about that. So if I can come up with an app ID that is somewhat relative to that ID, that's already a high potential. There should be a realistic market size. Now, if you're just building the app for fun, this doesn't really matter. But if you're aiming to quit your full-time job, make the app super successful, and that's what this YouTube series is about, right? Like, I want to make 10K monthly recurring revenue, then you need a proper market size. And the bigger the pie, the easier it becomes to take a little cut of the pie and make a little money. You need to make sure that there's search demand. And this sounds easier than it actually is, but there are tools to find out whether somebody searches for the app ID at all. And if they don't, it doesn't necessarily mean it's a bad app ID. It could be that you're filling an untapped potential and you kind of like need to find a way to service your app ID to them, right? Before there were weather radars, I didn't know I needed it. But then I saw it and I was like, oh man, I can't live without it anymore. Now, this is a difference between pull and push, because if there's already a search demand, you basically just have to surface your app and they will find it themselves. But if they don't know they need the app yet, then it becomes a bit more difficult to sell your app ID. So this is a crucial decision as well. You also need a clear monetization path. For this series, I want to make 10K MRR. So a simple app that saves pictures of your dog will likely not result in 10K MRR. But if you're targeting an audience that you know will save like an hour of time, and with that hour of time they can make a lot of money, then it's much easier to ask money for your product as well. And nowadays with AI, you can integrate ChatGPT's, OpenAI APIs, right? It becomes a lot easier to create those productivity kind of tools. So the monetization path for your goal is quite important. And if you want to quit your full-time job, you probably have a certain salary. And if you want to reach that salary within a year, well, you kind of like know what your app should kind of like earn for you. And don't be a copycat. Unfortunately, we've seen it more and more lately where apps are just popping up everywhere. AI makes it now so much easier to build an app ID as well, right? Here's a recent 9to5Mac article that I want to point out, and it's about the App Store guidelines that changed recently. Apple doesn't want you to build another QR scanner app, right? You shouldn't just copy the Sora 2 app. These are actual screenshot examples of the App Store. These are not original. And in fact, if you're now trying to do this because you see like a QR scanner app still makes 10K MRR each month while it hasn't been updated for 2 years, well, you're risking your developer account. Plus, why won't you build something original? And you can still be inspired by existing IDs, right? You might have some kind of scanner app, but it scans the documents and directly parses it into a summary and emails it to your personal MacBook account, making it ready to use the next day. I don't know. It's a different angle to the same ID. The thing is, you shouldn't just copy paste the exact app that is in the App Store. And you need to become original, and especially if you want to get like featured by Apple, be supported by Apple, or be the next big app, maybe win an Apple Design Award. Well, I think it's kind of obvious that you won't get that if you're just copying an existing app that's already out there. And finally, if you can build an app ID that fits your existing audience, that is a big win. I have a lot of reach in the developer tooling. I have a blog for app developers. If I build a new ID that helps app developers, I can basically just push it against that audience, and it likely has a starting audience to work with. I also target creators. I have a going indie course, which is about going independent. If I build something for creators, it's likely that I already have a starting audience. If I were to build that recipe app, I don't have many followers that are, cooks that are great in making food or anything. So I would have to tap into a new audience, build up that audience, and that takes a lot of time, and it automatically lowers the potential of your app becoming a success. And I believe with this checklist, you avoid 90% of the bad IDs instantly. So make sure to filter out the app IDs that are bad using this checklist. But where do good IDs even come from? Where do you get started? And there are several inspirational paths. For example, you could be fixing your own itch. I'm doing a lot of things myself, so I can also see repetitive tasks that are just cumbersome to do or they take a lot of time, right? If I can build a solution, that might be a new app ID. And it's very likely that if you face a certain problem, somebody else faces it too. And that multiplies, and you potentially have a reach for your app ID. And I bet you've been in that place where a friend reaches out, "Hey, Antoine, you're an app developer. Can you build this great app ID?" And I'm like, "Yeah, sure. You think that's doable? I'm all alone." Well, nowadays with AI, it might be possible, but either way, list those IDs. Make sure to keep track of them. And whenever you have the time to build a new app, then maybe you can get back to that list and start building it. Observe patterns in your own daily workflow. What slows you down? What are the repetitive tasks that you're constantly doing? What are things you can improve by just building a simple utility? And maybe that solution is super small, but who knows where it grows towards to, right? And eventually it might become fundamental app that many other people can use. And use AI as your brainstorming partner, right? Drop that app ID and share why you think that app ID is good. Ask AI whether or not I should build it. Is it high potential? How big is the market size? And I'll show you an example later on. And inspiration can also come from your domain expertise. Like I said, I built the WeTransfer app. I uploaded like tons of files during development. I know exactly what to do, background uploads, all those kind of things, right? I already have that expertise. So if I can tap into that potential with a certain app ID, it's much more likely that I'll move fast and I'll have an advantage for others that try to do it without any domain knowledge regarding file uploads. But inspiration is not enough. We also need to evaluate the IDs. So let's put things into practice and see what my profile looks like and how we can come up with app IDs for it. So my itch is really, I'm doing too many things. I try to grow on Twitter, I grow on Instagram, on TikTok, on YouTube, on LinkedIn, all at the same time. I'm also running a blog. I'm also sending out a newsletter. And meanwhile, I try to build a developer tool, develop courses, and I'm now building this new app for this series. Well, a lot of things, but I can do that due to the automations that I already have in place. But maybe I can build another automation. Let's see. So yeah, like I said, I manage a lot of social media accounts. If I can repurpose the content that I already created in more kind of like an automated way, that would free up a lot of time for me. And if it does for me, maybe it does for others as well. I love building utilities, productivity tools. I'm not the person to build like a new social media platform, which is hard either way, or a game or a fitness app or anything like that, or maybe an app that looks visually super beautiful. I'm not a designer, right? So if I can stick with native UI elements and a utility kind of tool, then that will be a perfect fit for me. And I already have an existing audience. It's either developers or indie creators. And maybe I can tap into a new audience as well, which would actually be great for this series, as I can show you much more struggling and learnings along the way. But yeah, let's see. This is at least my profile. So what do I want to achieve with the app? Like I said, I want it to be a utility or a productivity app. I just think it has more potential to be a success. Ideally, I tap into the existing audience that I already have. I'm also fine tapping into the creators audience and then maybe a bit broader, right? Like to have a bigger audience reach. There must be a subscription model, right? I want to get 10K monthly recurring revenue. If the app doesn't give any recurring value, it's probably much more making sense to do just a single purchase. But I want to have continuous value for the user. That way, it's also easier to justify a monthly price to pay, so to say. And I want a big pie. Not to eat it, I want a big pie to get a little chunk of it, which is already 10K MRR. So the market potential should be pretty big. And I know in the creators market, there is a lot of potential. I believe YouTube is going to grow like a ton. So maybe I'll tap into that. Let's see. So let's now match my problems, interests, and competences, right? I want to grow my reach on socials. I love building utilities and automations using AI. And I have a few problems already. Each social media platform has its own algorithm. Up until now, I'm basically creating custom GPT projects, putting in a lot of content, PDFs, years in review, what works and what doesn't work. And I'll let it generate, ideas for new articles or a YouTube video that potentially works great. But yeah, I need to do that for each social media platform. So if I can somewhat optimize that, that would already be great. And without automation, repurposing my content, it's pretty difficult. And what I also see is like, if I put a lot of energy in a certain platform, my growth accelerates. But if I then put interest into another platform, then that platform grows. So if I can find some kind of middle ground where automation helps me to, hold up multiple balls at the same time, then that would be amazing. And if I zoom in from all those platforms, Instagram, TikTok, not necessarily the platforms that I really want to grow. But LinkedIn, it's a professional audience. YouTube, it's a great source for new course members, right? So for me, focusing on those two platforms makes a lot of sense. I want to introduce you to the 2 app IDs that I have that I want to start with for this series. And I'll use those app IDs to evaluate them later with AI and the ASO tools that I have in mind. But yeah, let's first go over the ID that I have in my mind. And ID number 1 is a LinkedIn content creator. Now, I want to stick to the authenticity that I have, right? I want to be authentic. I don't want the AI tool to just randomly post messages everywhere. And I've been experimenting with this, and I've got feedback from people like, hey, I can tell your posts are AI generated. That's the last thing that I want, and that hurts my brand, that hurts who I am, because it's not who I am. But at the same time, if I can use the content that I already wrote, like my article, extract it into a LinkedIn carousel, which actually does great. But the words are still written by myself. That's an ideal path, and it will optimize the whole flow. But it's not the only idea that I have. I recently started leveling up my YouTube channel. In fact, you're watching this video, so you already found it. But YouTube, it's kind of interesting. If you want to grow there, something changed in the algorithm, apparently. And I'm not an expert yet, but I created the custom GPT project, and I kind of dived a little deeper into that. But apparently, if you're not having that many subscribers, you can still get a lot of views. And the other way around, if you already have a lot of subscribers, well, it doesn't necessarily mean that all your videos get a lot of views. What I mean to say is there is movement there. And there are so many creators on YouTube. So the pie is super big. And yes, there are a lot of tools already for YouTube that help you grow and so on and so on. And those are big companies, actually. But I think if I can build a native first experience, which is my expertise, right? Mac app development, iOS app development, this could be a potential ID. So let's research this ID alongside the LinkedIn content creator. So the first thing I want to do is validating the ID using an AI brainstorming partner. And for that, we can basically just open ChatGPT and start brainstorming, right? I have 2 app IDs. One is a LinkedIn content creator tool, and the other one is a YouTube optimizer. In terms of audience and potential of reaching 10K MRR, which one do you think I should focus on? So AI will think with you. And obviously AI has a memory, right? So AI knows kind of like your history, what you already did, what you've already worked on, but it also has a lot of knowledge that you don't necessarily have yourself. So here you can already see a quick verdict, right? So it says like you need to focus on the YouTube optimizer. But the LinkedIn Creator tool has a strong niche edge. Right, so it doesn't necessarily give me the right answer straight away. But if we look into the market size, estimated 100 million active creators worldwide. 100 million active creators. That's a lot. If I can tap into that, maybe only get 1%, that would be great. On LinkedIn, it's a much smaller audience. And I also know that on LinkedIn, the number of people that post is so low compared to the number of people that read. And I can actually tell that from my own posts, right? Posts that are 3 weeks old still get likes and impressions. So that also makes me wonder whether a LinkedIn content creator tool is actually something people want. And I also get an insight into the competition and differentiation, right? So YouTube, of course, highly competitive, but it's a super large market. It makes sense that people tap into this potential. On LinkedIn, the competition is tiny, but that could also mean that there's just not a need for this kind of tool. Or do people just don't know they need this tool? Something to explore. And obviously the willingness to pay, that's super important too. For YouTube, most tools are priced at $15 a month. Well, maybe $99 for the pros. I don't know whether I'll be able as a rookie YouTuber to reach those pros. Maybe not in the first year, maybe not in the second year, maybe later, eventually. At least there's a lot of room for growth. Say my app becomes a success, then I can grow quite a bit. For LinkedIn, it's a little bit different. A lower price value here, but still, like if you can ask 20 euros a month, you can grow quite fast towards 10K MRR, especially if the product is worth it, right? And here it's about the knowledge that AI already has, right? So it tells me like you already have a huge leverage for LinkedIn tools. I got followers on LinkedIn, and if I can convert my audience, that's 200 to 500 initial users. Completely right. There is a potential there, right? But yeah, he also knows that I'm growing on YouTube, so there is a potential there as well. So it's pretty hard to make a decision here. But yeah, for this YouTube series, it's super important. How do I get to the 10K MRR? And the YouTube optimizer seems to be the faster path towards it. So there is a potential there. So yeah, which one fits me better? If I want to build a business, then maybe the YouTube one. If I want to build a small, tiny app kind of, then yeah, maybe I should focus on LinkedIn. It also does a recommendation based on my situation, and it gives some more insights, and then it eventually gives a definite answer. And you will likely get a different output than I do. And the more you do this, the better AI knows you, the better it knows like, okay, what are your preferences? And you might actually want to fit that in, right? Like give it as much context as possible. And then eventually a good answer will come out of it. But the more data you have, the better this works. But I wouldn't just only use AI. I would also validate IEs using App Store optimization tools. And in this case, I want to use AppFigures. I got access now to their premium plan. Their plans differ a little bit, but you can quite quickly get a lot of insights that help you validate your app ID. And yes, it might cost money, tools like this, but if it saves you from months of building an app ID that doesn't have a potential, well, you want to pay attention to this and you want to pay a little money of it. I'm using AppFigures for years. I can highly recommend it. So let's start using this Explorer. First of all, I want to filter on the iOS App Store. Eventually, I think the most potential lies in the iOS App Store, at least for reach, right? Like if I tap into an audience that I don't necessarily have, I want to make sure that App Store optimization is possible for the app ID that I have. I also like to filter on subscriptions. This will show me apps that are already in the domain that earn money via subscriptions. So it might give me some kind of like validation that the app ID could potentially work. The next thing are categories, right? Like I already said that I want to focus on utilities and productivity tools. And this will already update the list and it will show me quite a lot of interesting things, right? I can see the monthly downloads, the monthly revenue, also the number of ratings and such. And now I briefly want to show you something you could do, right? This is the updated date. So what you can say is like, okay, I want to use 2023 and then like 2 years ago. These are apps that have not been updated for 2 years. You can see this, the last updated date, March 29, 2023. But you can still see it gets 380K downloads and a monthly revenue of 11K. So this is a QR code scanner. I should build a QR code scanner, just make sure it's updated and make money out of it. No, you should not. Remember that I said you can't be a copycat. You don't want to be a copycat. In fact, I wonder if it's even possible to get a new QR code scanner through App Store's review. It's very likely that they will say, hey, this is not a unique app. You won't get this published. What you should do instead is use this list as an inspiration. There is still a potential for these kind of app IDs, and maybe your app ID aligns a little bit with it, and it shows you like, okay, people are still searching for this. iOS has a built-in QR code scanner, and still this QR code scanner gets a lot of attention, right? So sometimes you feel like an app ID can't work anymore in this year, but still the data proves different. So once again, I want to stress, don't copy the apps that are here. I just want to show this as a source of inspiration. So let's clear that filter and go back to the text search. What you can now do is, for example, search for LinkedIn. Now, this gives you a lot of results, and it's not the most optimal way of using this tool. Instead, what I like to do is go into the LinkedIn app, see which keywords it ranks for, and then go along those keywords and see if I can find a keyword that has a potential for me to focus on. So I'm now at the keyword inspector. Here we can search for LinkedIn content creation as an example. And eventually we got the top results for this keyword. And you can see LinkedIn is obviously the biggest domain here. There are some other apps as well, like Buffer, which is a social media manager. But yeah, there's also some revenue metrics, so we can see that there's money to earn there. But I mean, those apps are big, right? Like we can't easily make 23 million by just building an app for LinkedIn. So instead, what I want to do is click on LinkedIn, click on full profile, click on keyword ranks, and then I want to explore what are people searching for related to LinkedIn. Now, these are keywords LinkedIn ranks for in general, right? And there's a lot of unrelated keywords as well, so like Facebook. So let's instead use LinkedIn and see related keywords for LinkedIn specifically. And this will move us to a more dedicated page for just LinkedIn. You can see that LinkedIn has quite a high popularity score, but it's also very competitive, right? So it's not very likely that we will have something to work towards if we just focus on the LinkedIn keyword. So instead, you want to filter on the popularity being maybe medium. So, for a new app like ours, it might be possible to rank for it. And then the competitiveness, we can say like, okay, at a maximum, maybe 75 or something like that. But the problem is that, and that's at least my conclusion, and, I'm not an ASO expert, but these insights already help, is that people that search for LinkedIn will often search for job searches, right? And that kind of like also confirms the thought that I had, like how many people are actually searching to become the new LinkedIn creator? Like how many are on LinkedIn to build up a social media profile, right? Like that's such a niche. And this is also the moment where I could realize like, okay, maybe people don't know they need this app, but I want to build an app successfully. So at this point, I'm not so sure whether the LinkedIn Optimizer app is something to build. So let's now focus on the other app ID. Here I've searched for YouTube and I configured the popularity and the competitiveness, but just to give you an idea what people search for, right? So YouTube tags, YouTube tagger, not sure what it even is, YouTube promotion. Well, you could potentially see some IDs, and I can already tell there are some competitors here like vidIQ, a tracker for YouTube. So there are some lists here, but a popularity score of 5 is not really high. You want to get it at least to maybe like 10 or above. That's how I like to look at IDs. So when I remove the competitive filter, you can see a bit other results, but there's also a point here. We're now searching for the YouTube app in general, and I'm going to focus on the creators of YouTube. So it might make more sense to focus on YouTube's Studio app. So I've opened the YouTube Studio dedicated page, and now I'm going to see where this app ranks from 1 to 10. Because those are the keywords that people kind of use to actually install the app. I'm pretty sure, because otherwise, it would be odd to get so high in the ranking, right? If nobody ever installs an app that's in the top 10, then it's probably an unrelated app. And there are a few interesting keywords that I want to highlight. So you have a creators app and a YT Studio. I actually learned people search for YT Studio here. So this might be a potential to work towards too. In fact, let's see if we can find some related words to YT Studio. So the page is fully loaded. We can see an estimated revenue of 102 million. I'm pretty sure that this is mostly related to what YouTube earns, but still, there's a lot of money going on there. And now we can actually see a few keywords where the competitiveness goes down, right? 76 is still super high, probably still pretty hard to get ranked for. But if we get into like the top 10, maybe that gives us enough body to grow further and eventually get that 10K MRR. So editing apps for YouTube, it's at least something people search for. But this is probably more about video editing, right? But this one, a YouTube thumbnail maker, YouTube optimizers should potentially create thumbnails as well, right? So people search for this. Then we have enhance YouTube. Once again, it proves to me people are searching for this, right? People are searching for tools that relate to YouTube videos. And I'm not an ASO expert. This is mostly just exploring what is out there, what do people search for. But I can at least tell there is much more potential for this YouTube app compared to a LinkedIn app, right? People search for it, so I just need to tap into that potential and beat that competitiveness. And hopefully, eventually, I can get an ASO expert in this series and let it help me find the keywords that I should probably focus on the most. So that was about validating IDs using either AI or an ASO tool. I want to continue this video and share why passion matters. I see so many people just build another AI app just because AI is so popular. But if it's not your passion, it will fail. Because you will face challenges and you will push through, and maybe you'll get through the first year. And if the AI tool is successful, I'm sure you'll be able to get yourself motivated and keep doing it because it makes the money that you wanted to achieve. But if you have an app ID that's a little less successful, pushing through those challenges will be so much harder if you don't love what you're building. And you'll face the valley of disappointment. I'm sure I will even face it with my YouTube series. The app will go live, I only get a few downloads, maybe nobody signs up for the paid subscription. Those are all disappointments. And if I'm able to push through, then eventually I'm sure it will become a success. In fact, this is a chart from RocketSim. When I started it in 2020 and eventually in kind of like March, May, April of 2024, you can actually see that I started to really make a lot of money and growth accelerated. There's a huge spike in November 22, but that's already 2 years in. But I kept pushing through. I believed in the product. It was my passion. It was a productivity tool that I needed myself as an app engineer, and eventually it made the money that I wished for. In fact, this is the reason I'm now making this video, because it allowed me to go fully independent. And every time you start a new project, it starts with excitement and joy. You love doing it, but it becomes more and more challenging, right? The project becomes more mature. Then eventually you start getting doubts because the results are disappointing, and then eventually you give up. And what you do? Well, you start a new project because, there's excitement and joy. And then it becomes more and more challenging, and eventually you get doubts and you're giving up. What I mean to say is you should never quit because it becomes challenging, right? Failure is just temporary unless you make it permanent. If you stop, if you give up, sure, then it becomes a failure. But if you push through, make your app better, listen to your users, eventually your app will become a success. I'm pretty sure. And learn by shipping, right? Get that app out. Learn from your users. Listen what they're saying. Maybe look at the reviews from competitors and see what they're missing. Why do they give a 1-star review? If you can find out, solve that, then your app becomes a better alternative. And that's it for this episode. I gave you insights in how to come up with a good app ID, the 8 requirements that I think you should apply to each app ID to filter them out. I also showed you how this concept kind of like works for me, the automation tools that I want to improve, and the 2 app IDs that I might be building. I'm not telling you yet which app ID I will eventually build. That's something for the next episode. For now, I would love for you to like this video and subscribe to my channel if you enjoyed it. And until the next episode,